Supposed to do this. You can't ask one witness to comment on the credibility of another witness. But once you've done that as a defense lawyer, the prosecution, what are they going to do? Object to you asking the law enforcement officer whether he thinks Zimmerman was truthful or not? It's a difficult position to be in as a prosecutor because you expect your cops to be on your team, and that's not what's been happening so far.
In every episode of Law & Order, the cops usually are on the side of the prosecutor, right?
And in reality, that's what happens. And because cops are testifying to a jury and they are considered to be so credible, these are not normal witnesses. These are super witnesses. The jury is going to pay attention to these folks. They like to believe cops. They trust cops. So whoever the cops believe, whichever story they seem to support, that's going to be incredibly effective.
Okay, so we're wondering what's going on in court right now. Sonny Hostin is actually listening in. She's in Sanford. What are they talking about, Sonny?
Yeah, and what they're talking about is exactly what you guys are talking about in studio. Listen, the prosecution this morning is saying, you know what, the fact that Detective or Investigator Serino talked about whether or not he believed George Zimmerman was truthful, was credible, is off balance. That is not something that a witness should do. You never have a witness bolstering the credibility of another witness or giving an opinion as to the credibility of another witness, especially when it's a police officer. Police officers usually just talk about the facts. They talk about the facts of the case. They certainly talk about the interviews. They talk about their perceptions, but they don't give opinions. So first thing this morning, the prosecution wants to address it. The prosecution says the defense was completely wrong by eliciting that testimony. And I think, Carol, that's why we were all so shocked. The legal nerds like me, I was just shocked that you have a detective on the witness stand saying, yeah, you know what, I thought he was credible, I thought he was believable. That struck a blow to this prosecution, and the court is addressing that now.
Okay, so the court is addressing it. Jason and I we're court observers. We're normal people. Yeah. We might be members of the jury, right? But once the cat's out of the bag, the cat's out of the bag.
Right, you can't make people forget what they just saw. And what I thought was really fascinating is, you know, the questions that Serino and the other officer asked during the taped investigation. They seemed less convinced a year ago than they do today. And as a juror, I would be wondering, well, what happened between that interview and now that you're suddenly saying you think he's credible when you didn't seem to think he was credible 12 hours later?
Oh, Sonny, you wanted to add something about the jury and how the jury, like if the judge comes back to the jury and says, oh, just discount all that stuff that detectives said. I mean, how do you make the jury actually do that?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. You can't unring the bell, and it's something that surprised me yesterday when the note that the examination ended on was, yeah, I believed he was truthful. This is something I think that the prosecution should have addressed yesterday, especially because they addressed improper opinion evidence early on before the trial, in limine before the trial. So that was a missed opportunity by the defense during this examination, or perhaps it was really good lawyering by Mark O'Mara to kind of slip it in at the very end of the day and end his examination on that note. But I think you're right. Wow, once something like that comes out, even if the judge takes, let's say, the extraordinary measure to tell the jury you are to disregard everything Detective Serino said other than what is in the audio tape recording or the videotape, and that's the kind of remedy I think would be appropriate in a case like this. You can't unring the bell. The jury's already heard he believed him.
All right, as we await the Detective Serino to enter the courtroom and to take the stand, we're going to take a break. We'll be back with much more in the newsroom.
Do you have diabetes?